Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Urbana-Champaign. My name is Kelly Skinner. My pronouns are she and her, and as of the beginning of this month, I am now your Director of Lifetime Faith Formation. I am so delighted to lead worship this morning as we explore what it means to live as UUs within our congregation. In this community challenged by our liberating faith, made up of many different theologies and identities, we are united by our shared commitment to building community, seeking inspiration, promoting justice, and finding peace. I want to welcome each and every one of you, whether you are on the live stream or here with us in person. We're so pleased to, as always, have newcomers in this room and participating virtually. So thank you for showing up. If you'd like to learn more about this community and get connected, please complete a printed or virtual visitor card or introduce yourself to one of our hospitality team members. A couple of quick announcements this morning. First, we are a congregation of all ages, so we embrace all the noise and little disruptions our kids can bring into a Sunday morning. We also have a nursery downstairs that's open for infants and kids under 5, but also anyone of any age who might need more space or wants to move around or stretch their legs is welcome to enjoy the live stream of their service on our very new and improved AV system in Fellowship Hall. I also want to invite everyone for conversation and kinship during our social hour immediately following the service. Or if you're so inclined, please come outside for an all-ages gathering to unleash your creativity. We have a ton of cardboard boxes and lots of tape for you to transform into unique sculptures and structures. And whether you're a child or just a child at heart, grab a snack and head to the lawn for a fun-filled adventure into the world of imagination to build and create anything that you can think up. I also want to bring your attention to a blue bin, which is outside of Fellowship Hall. Our immigration justice team is working to get 15 or more backpacks donated by August 4th so that they can be assembled and blessed during our service on August 11th. These backpacks will be filled with items and gift cards for unaccompanied minors new to the Champaign-Urbana community going to high school this fall. And you can purchase a backpack to donate and learn more on our website. And finally, a shameless plug for volunteers for our REE program. This is the time of year that I'm pulling together teaching teams for Sunday morning, training facilitators for our OWL Human Sexuality program, and figuring out who can help make everything we do throughout the year happen. Please consider how you might deepen your own spiritual journey by volunteering in some way. We need people with all different abilities and skills, those with vision and big ideas, those who want to work with kids or youth or adults, and people who want to help with those small behind the scenes but still very important tasks. Without your participation and energy, we could not provide so many opportunities for learning and growth. So sign up online, and there's also a QR code outside of my office in Fellowship Hall. So now let's prepare to begin our time of worship together. I'd like to invite up Michaela Cruz to help with our chalice lighting. Whenever we gather, we light a flaming chalice, and it's a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist tradition to mark this time as special and sacred. If you have a chalice at home, you can light it now with us.
This is a congregation that gathers in faith, not faith in one religion or one God or any one way. We gather in faith of the power of diversity, the power of love, and the hope of a world transformed by our care. We gather in faith in ourselves and those around us, not a faith that requires perfection or rightness in one another. Rather, a faith that in our shared imperfection, we may learn to stumble and fall together. Faith that we will help one another to rise and to try again and again. We are Unitarian Universalists.
So one of the things that I truly love about UUism and this faith community is that it's real, and we can be real together. And that means acknowledging the water that we're swimming in, the air around us, and the events that shape our days and our lives. Some of them affect just one of us or some of us, and others cast ripples out into the whole of the community. Yesterday, we experienced one of those events. I don't yet have the words, but luckily we have wise truth tellers and soul seers like our very own Reverend Beth Mulholland.
Dear ones, there are so many times when I read the news that I want to just run away screaming into the woods and never come back. And perhaps you have moments where you feel that way as well. And perhaps yesterday was one of those, as the headlines of yet another shooting in America screamed across our television screens and our news feeds. The sad thing is that the shooting that happened yesterday would not normally even have made a blip on the American news scene, except this one, as we know, happened at a political rally and was an attempted assassination of our former president. One bystander in the crowd was tragically killed, their name not yet released. And I grieve for that life that is now lost, that family who will never again be the same. I grieve for the violence that seems to permeate our very existence in this land. And that sometimes numbing grief this morning is weighed even more heavily by the fear of what might happen next in these coming months. And that fear and that grief can freeze us in place, can make that escape out into the woods seem like, oh, so tempting. There is so much we cannot control. But as our Unitarian Universalist values remind us, we are deeply interconnected and interdependent upon one another. And so let us focus on the connections that we form when we gather. Let us focus on what we can control, which is being here together physically and virtually in this space, and let us breathe in and out. We breathe in, we breathe out. We feel ourselves in our bodies here and now. We breathe in, we breathe out, and we know we are deeply connected to all life. We breathe in, we breathe out. And we know that no matter our political affiliations, no matter our histories, our beliefs, we all are inherently worthy and loved. Last night, amidst my own fear, I stepped outside and I felt the warm, hot breeze on my skin. I heard the sounds of crickets in the distance. I saw the bright light of the moon and the flicker of fireflies in the grass. and the flickering light of those fireflies reminded me that light and love endure amidst violence, amidst uncertainty, amidst grief and fear. And I breathed in the summer air, and it did not make my fear and grief go away, but the light helped me to carry it a little easier in that moment. And my prayer for all of us this morning, here and now, as we breathe in and out, is that we will remember that we too are a flickering light for each other. And so we breathe, and our breath is a prayer, and we breathe, and our breath is love, and we breathe, and we breathe, and we breathe. May it be so, and amen.
So this morning's service invites us to consider the following quote: "Everything we do is faith development. Everything we teach is Unitarian Universalism, and the congregation is the curriculum." And this quote, it's kind of a mishmash of ideas from Catholic educator Maria Harris and Connie Goodbread, who is a congregational life consultant for the UUA. It perfectly describes our philosophy for lifespan religious education. We start with everything we do is faith development. Here at UUC, we use the term REE, which is religious exploration and engagement. But over the last 18 months, several of you might have heard me use the term faith development. Faith development looks like the process of movement and growth in spirit and in heart, changing and learning from cradle to grave. This lifelong endeavor is part of what makes us Unitarian Universalists, and our theology tells us that revelation is not sealed, and that means that wisdom is never capped off or finished, but unfolds throughout our entire lives. Next, everything we teach is Unitarian Universalism. This is the religion that we teach, and it's worth teaching. It's worth doing, and it's worth living. Therefore, what we must know and be totally clear on is that what Unitarian Universalism is, what our core teachings and values are, and what it looks like when we're living those things out. Unitarian Universalism is covenantal, pluralistic, and transformational. Visiting a neighboring church, cleaning the playground together, reading books and watching movies, playing board games, serving coffee, making budgets and attending committee meetings, going outside and building cardboard towers, using pronouns, writing get well cards, and giving feedback to one another. In these moments, we are teaching Unitarian Universalism. And finally, the congregation is the curriculum. A curriculum is a set of lessons or instructions for a course. Friends, we are the lesson. How we live, how we greet one another, how we act when we are in community together. This is the greatest curriculum that we can give one another. Everything we do is faith development. Everything we teach is Unitarian Universalism, and the congregation is the curriculum. So again, a warm welcome to each and every one of you, whether you're here in person or joining us online, whether today is your first Sunday with us or your thousandth. We are stronger because you are with us. We are one people of many beliefs, origins, identities, and genders. We are all growing, all learning, all loved. It is good to be together. So now I invite the crooners up to sing our opening hymn. If you want to open it up in your books, it's number 300, With Heart and Mind.
You're singing with us. Stand up.
Our first reading this morning is written by UU minister, the Reverend Dr. Jason Cook. He writes, "We are seekers on a quest to discover truth and meaning. Sometimes we think we found it, wrapped up, glittering with newness straight off the intellectual assembly line. All the answers right here for us, and others if they'd only listen. But truth has a way of coming in disguise, sometimes wearing rags and sometimes finery, but so often cloaked from our immediate sight. And sometimes that which we have rejected, that which we have let go of, or decided was only for others but not for us, can be our teacher. May we join together to reaffirm and reawaken to the never-ending journey toward truth and meaning."
So our first part is to talk about everything we do is faith development. That's the first line of that quote from Connie Goodbread. And I want to unpack that quote for you because it so succinctly sums up the work that we do, you and I and all of us here in our congregation and really in all UU spaces. I first learned about this quote at a professional development class that I took And it's stuck with me, and it's really become a mantra in my work as a religious educator. So much so that this is reflected in my new title. And why are Connie Goodbread and I calling what I do faith development instead of something like church school or religious education or religious exploration and engagement? Words are complicated. They can mean different people or different things to different people at different times in their life. When I hear the words church school or Sunday school, I think of something that is regimented, where there's a teacher who's up at the front and imparting knowledge to students. That education piece sometimes has a negative connotation about rote memorization and recitation and being top-down instruction-based. And that's not us or what we do. When I hear religious education or even religious exploration, I do think of something that's more relational, but still about giving something that I have to people who don't have it. But when I hear faith development, I think of something that's more experiential, something that people are doing at many different stages and phases of their life, and something that they're doing together. So I want to share this amazing graphic that I love. That's the work of Joy Berry. I want to talk through this graphic a little bit with you to help you understand some of what's important to me about the term faith development and some of what we're currently doing in our program, as well as what we hope to do moving forward. So you'll see there's a big loaded word up there at the top, faith. People have a lot of feelings about that word, and I've heard them from some of you. A lot of things that people bring with them, understandings from previous aspects of their lives. So I want to tell you what I mean when I use the word faith. When I say faith, as in faith development, I mean two things. One is the Unitarian Universalists' faith, which is a historic, inheritable, like ancestry, like you inherited something. It's a religious tradition with deep roots that we can pass on to our children, to our grandchildren, to the ancestors moving forward in our lives. The other definition of faith is a deep knowingness and trust in something larger than ourselves. This can be a belief in divine, in love, in purpose, or something else entirely. A more eloquent way to say this is the Hindu word Shraddha, which means the heart's resting place. There's lots and lots of different theories about how faith develops over time and with experience in human beings. James Fowler, if you're familiar with him, is one of the preeminent thinkers in this field. And the remaining big words here, faith is caught, faith is taught, faith is bought, and faith is sought, come from his work. We have faith development classes for our very young children because faith is caught. We want our littlest ones to catch our values and our traditions and our beliefs. They'll do this no matter what we do, whether we have classes or not, but we create formal opportunities for this to happen and to support families and caregivers to make this happen in their homes and in their lives. And for our adults, if you grew up in a different faith, or even if you didn't grow up in a religious tradition, you may still carry around those ideas that you caught as a child in your church, in your synagogue, in your mosque, in your temple, or just in your family and community. Some of these ideas you might still value, and others you might want to set aside. We have adult faith development classes and groups that can help you examine your ideas and whether they still fit for you, or if you need to let go of them. There's a small group ministry that we have called Soul Care, where you can meet regularly to share about your life and focus on a monthly theme. We also offer a support group for parents and guardians called Parents as Sexuality Educators, and that'll be happening in the spring, to look at the messages that each one of us received about sexuality growing up and whether they serve you now in raising your own family. We also have faith development classes for our elementary age children because faith is taught. We want to teach our bigger kids about how to think about choices, how UUs do things as opposed to how other people do things, about the many options that human beings find meaningful to believe. This coming year, we'll have Sunday morning classes that explore UU principles and values in age-appropriate and experiential ways. Kids from preschool through third grade will use stories and songs, crafts, and spiritual practices to learn the fundamental values of Unitarian Universalism. We will also be offering adult classes and programs that teach these same lessons explicitly and implicitly. We invite adults who are relatively new to the congregation, new to UU, or even if you've been around for a while, to help in our children's classes because there's no better way to learn a subject than by teaching it. Teaching children's faith development classes is an opportunity for parents and other adults to explore all the topics and stories and ideas and songs with our kids so that everyone involved can learn and grow. Our congregation also does the Our Whole Lives program, or OWL, which is a comprehensive, age-appropriate, values-based human sexuality education program. What? Sex in church? What? This program, the program that we do for younger kids, focuses on birth and babies, bodies, and families. The program for teens gets into more in-depth, supporting them as they enter puberty and begin to explore their sexuality and gender identity. The program for our youth deepens their knowledge of life and their knowledge and life skills that they'll need to express their sexuality in a healthy way in high school and beyond. We welcome our 7th through 9th graders into the OWL class this year. We'll also be offering a new adult class in the spring to help build understanding of healthy sexual relationships, affirm diversity, and help participants to accept and affirm their own sexuality throughout the entirety of their adult life. Faith is bought. We have faith development classes for our older adolescent children and teens because we know they're embarking on their own search for truth and meaning, and we want to support that seeking. On Sunday mornings, older elementary kids and middle schoolers will be playing games every week during Sunday REE time. Games remind us that the spirit of fun can permeate everything that we do, and fun can be full of meaning. Our hybrid youth will have a hybrid live and online class on Sunday mornings with opportunities for bonding, sharing stories, and connecting through play and creativity. Bought faith also looks like adults taking leadership roles in the congregation and the REE program. You could be a person who helps others within our congregation test what they believe and explore how their hearts and their minds might expand. This could be serving as a Soul Matters group leader, teaching an adult class, training or supporting our classroom teachers, planning programs, or helping us advise and carry out our vision for faith development. Faith is sought. We connect with movements and ideas beyond our own church and our own concerns, so that as adults, we too can search for truth and meaning in the broader world. Throughout the year, we have film and book discussions and speakers to stimulate our thoughts and inspire our hearts to act. And we also send delegates to UUA trainings, to workshops, to assemblies. In our Exploring World Religions program, we learn and experience other faith traditions as we compare and contrast these other religions with our own. We become better grounded in our faith and clarify our own particular UU identity. And through our new adult Faith Forward classes, we will learn more about UU values and how to live them out and explore various spiritual practices. Oftentimes, we UUs get stuck in that fourth stage of the faith development paradigm. We really like to be the hero of the story who's seeking and questioning and discovering in a very intellectual way. But there's another stage of faith development, and that's faith that's wrought. Wrought means it's forged. Our UUC mission statement calls us to build community. We come together to provide a caring community, to encourage and support one another in our religious, spiritual, and personal development, and to promote a more just and peaceful world. If you look in Fellowship Hall, spirituality is one of our core values, and this congregation inspires us in many ways to search for, be guided, and move towards what gives us purpose in our lives. Our spirituality and inner exploration create a path to our why, our reason for being, a way to find peace and hope for a better world. But you know what's not written in our congregational covenant, in our mission statement, in our values? There's no until statement that's attached to that. There's no prescribed endpoint to how we learn and grow. We don't say in your childhood, that's when it stops, or until you turn 18, or until enlightenment is achieved. A person whose faith is wrought is a person whose faith is created over time and through interaction with different people and different ideas, to be willing to make and remake your own faith over and over again in the company of other people and in reaction to the community that you share with them. Faith development is not just for our kids, despite what we sometimes assume or what we default to. Wrought faith is a lifelong endeavor as we question our assumptions and shine a light on our beliefs over and over and over again. Everything we do is faith development. The things I've just shared are just a few examples and highlights of our faith development opportunities here in this congregation. But if you remember nothing else, I want you to think of faith development not as a transactional method through which we give and our children and youth receive, but as our central calling, meaningful work for all ages, and transformational for individuals, our whole church, our whole community, and our whole world. And now I would like to invite back up the crooners for hymn 402, From You I Receive.
So we're going to do this as a round. We'll all sing it through once, and then the second time through this side, we'll start, and then 4 measures later, the other side will come in, and we'll do that twice through. And I'll lead you so you know when to come in, okay? Okay. Good. 402.
So I was going to tell you a story about our own congregation, but I just want to bring up really fast an example of faith development in our congregation very, very quickly. You might know that we do our shared offerings. We choose community organizations, and we pick them and we vote on them, and we share our plate with them once a month. And last year, we decided that we wanted to engage our youth and our kids and our at all ages into participating in that process. And so they spent some time with their teachers in their classrooms researching organizations that were meaningful to them. And 3 of our classes put together proposals for the shared offerings. And they created presentations with visuals, and it was amazing to watch them. And they went to the meeting, and where the groups were selected, and it was understood that if you were under 12 years old, you couldn't vote in that process. And the 3 classes that put together the proposals, who put their time and their hearts and their passions into those proposals, were excluded from the selection process, from picking any of the organizations that they nominated. Now, through the process, I believe one of the organizations that were nominated was actually selected, and we'll actually be hearing about them later today, but it created a sense of urgency and passion within our young people about kids and youth's participation within our congregation. And so they met again, and they rallied around this call of let kids vote. And they met with our shared offering committee chairman, and they met with the vice president of our board of trustees, and they drafted a powerful letter outlining their reasons why kids should be allowed to participate through their voice and their vote in this heartbeat example of generosity of our congregation. And I was amazed to watch them, their passion, their insightfulness. You might have been here when they made signs and they paraded around Fellowship Hall, but they clearly articulated their reasons and their rationale in this letter that they presented and their talks with these leaders of our congregation. And that's faith development. it's not just changing a policy. It's not just about equity. It's not just about what organizations we pick and why. It's about that all of the people in this room, from our babies to our oldest elders, matter. And every day we learn something new about how to be in community together and what faith development is. So a piece of our mission is to build community. And in that vein, we have many spiritually enriching and socially engaging programs here all the time. There's so many opportunities that we give you to connect with one another within these walls and beyond it. And this morning, I want to highlight 3 of our programs, and those are our regular Friday offerings that you may or may not be aware of. So the 3rd Friday of every month is our Sage Cafe, and this is thoughtful and heartfelt conversations around life's big questions. And I mentioned Sage Cafe first because this Friday, July 19th, is when the Sage Cafe is meeting, and they're going to be talking about their thoughts and feelings on the topic, what are our dreams? The first Friday of every single month, we've been offering popcorn theology, and it's a fun and engaging opportunity to watch a popular movie and talk about where we see the values-based and spiritual themes within that movie. Our movie for August is Naiad, which is the true story of athlete Diana Naiad, who at the age of 60 and with the help of her best friend and coach commits to achieving her lifelong dream, which is a 110-mile open ocean swim from Cuba to Florida. And our feminist book group will be actually assisting with that event. Then on 4th Friday of every month, we have an all-ages game night. And we have board games and card games, pizza and snacks. And you can try a new game or play an old game. And all are welcome, whether you're part of this congregation or a community member. And it's a great way to get to know other people from this congregation in a more light and social way. And finally, about 4 times of the year on the 2nd Friday of the month, the LGBTQ folks, the welcoming committee, and their allies, they host a potluck in a meeting, and the next one should be coming up on August 9th. So just know that when you're seeking community, we have something almost every Friday of the year. So be sure to read your e-news for more details and opportunities to connect and to grow. So now we're going to be moving into talking a little bit about that shared offering. And while the mission of this congregation is made possible through our shared time and talents and financial generosity of our members and friends, we know that our work within this congregation is strengthened by our connections to the wider community. To live into the spiritual practices of generosity and interdependence, we share a portion of our offering funds each week with an organization whose values align with us. And through the end of July, our shared offering will go to an organization called Feeding Our Kids. And I'm going to bring back up Michaela Cruz to tell us a little bit about that organization.
Hi, my name is Michaela Cruz, and I'm the Director of Nutrition for Feeding Our Kids. So that means as a registered dietitian, I do the meal planning and the food ordering for our organization. So we're a backpack program. We were started by a couple of moms who were on a school field trip, and they noticed food insecurity among the students there. Students trying to save food from their school lunches to make it last through the weekend. And they started a nonprofit to fill in that gap. So a backpack program makes weekend food bags that go home in the kids' backpacks on Fridays to make up for the food that they would have gotten had they been at school over the weekend. So a couple of breakfasts, a couple of lunches, a couple of snacks. So as I understand, I was just confirming with Kelly that Feeding Our Kids was the organization that was selected by the kids when they were asking to let the kids vote. And what I love about that is that Feeding Our Kids not only serves kids, it is the only organization I've ever been able to find in town where kids can also volunteer. Not just adults or older teenagers, but any kid can come volunteer. So every week we have food sorts where we pack these bags, and all the foods are laid out in bins on tables, and you just take a bag and you walk around the table, put one of each food in the bag, and then if you can tie it, you tie it. Otherwise, you set it on the table for the sort captain to tie and count into bins. So I love that this organization was selected by the kids because it's not just an organization that serves kids, but it's an organization for kids to volunteer in. So we have had kids logging so many hours at our food sorts that they've been recognized as having some of our most volunteer hours at our annual events. We have had kids that are so familiar with our food sorts that they moved into the role of sort captain, and much to the surprise and usual delight, are directing the other adults what to do at a food sort. We have had kids host food drives where they ask us what foods we need, and then they have a big food drive to collect a whole bunch of that food. We've had kids as part of their sports team or their school team or their 4-H team gather as a group to come do a volunteer food sort together as a team building. And because, we serve kids that come to volunteer can also serve themselves. They can make their own food bag to take home for themselves and their family. So yes, thank you for selecting Feeding Our Kids, and yes, let the kids vote, and let the kids act, and let the kids help themselves and their families and their communities.
So we're going to do our offertory, and we invite you to give whatever is generous for you, and know that anything you contribute will make a real impact. We're going to sing From You I Receive again, so if our song leaders could help with that while we do the offering. For all the ways you support this congregation and our community, we offer thanks. And so with appreciation, the offering will now be gratefully received. So when you hear the word stewardship, most people think it's about giving money. While this is certainly true and extremely important, stewardship is more generally about the responsible care and management of something that matters. At UUCUC, stewardship is ultimately a spiritual and an ethical practice. It means caring for this congregation and putting the values it represents into action. Being stewards mean that we embrace responsibility to care for, manage, and ensure the sustainability of this community. Members and friends have been stewarding our liberal religious community in Urbana for more than a century. And so I welcome up Mona Shannon, who's a dedicated volunteer who helps lead our stewardship efforts, to share some information.
Hello. As you may know, we use a fiscal year here, and we've just completed our fiscal year. Yay, and it had just started a new one. And surprisingly, I'm not here to ask you for money. I know, you're like, is that Mona? I'm here to thank you, especially thanking all the people who have completed their pledge for this last fiscal year. Because of you, we were able to do the things that we did. As you may know, our pledges support over 80% of our budget. So when we talk about faith development and we talk about engagement and doing these things, you're not only the curriculum, you're everything. You're the fire. You make it happen. And on the more mundane side, you're going to be getting your quarterly statements next week. And sometimes it's really easy to ignore those. I want you to open them up, and I want you to savor that. I want you to say, hey, we are awesome, because you are. And if some of that mundane, practical stuff is in your way, Kathy Vance and I are going to be out in Fellowship Hall, and we can help you with that, answer questions, or set things up online if you want to set up recurring payments or even see wherever you are. But don't let that part get in the way of the joy. It really should be joyful. And if you would like to make things easier, there is a barcode on the back of your order of service today, and you could set up recurring payments for next year if that's something that works for you. But just really enjoy that you are this congregation and you're making these things happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona. So everything we teach is Unitarian Universalism. And we know that as a community, we each bring with us both the joys and our sorrows when we gather. Practicing our interdependence, we share those joys and sorrows with each other, knowing that in sharing, our sorrows may be easier to carry and our joys more abundant. If you have a joy or sorrow you want to publicly share today, I invite you to complete a card which the ushers will bring to you, or you can pull out your phones if you're in the room or online and submit it to joys and sorrows _@_UUCUC.org. And we'll sing together our blessing song, May the Longtime Sun, as you complete your written joys and sorrows. May the act of sharing together bring us comfort.
From Kyle Croha. Grateful for Reverends B and S. Was hospitalized with DVT and too many pulmonary embolisms to count, macro and micro and meso. I am okay now, exclamation point. Go interventional radiology. Thank you. From Angela Burton. We are thankful for our daughter Olivia, whose birthday is today. She's become such a wonderful young woman, and we are so proud of her. From Amanda Jane Pellett, I turned 43 years old last week. Happy birthday. From Mia Bella Miller, I got a puppy we named Cricket. I'm checking the online entries as well. Okay, and then there's two more. We have a sorrow from Mary Smith, who writes, "My brother has cancer." So sorry, Mary. And from Dr. Beth Simpson, I turned in my dissertation, done, finished. Congratulations. Yeah, go ahead.
And a couple of joys folks submitted online. This is from Claudia and David Gross. They share the joyful news that this week, 2 of their grandchildren were on the campus for the Illinois Summer Youth Music. They share it was thrilling beyond words to see our 8th grade granddaughter perform in a band on the stage of the Great Hall at Krannert. And their grandson was in an oboe concert in the music building. This program is the University of Illinois at its very best. And a joy from Priscilla Crone. I'm extremely happy to be here this morning after going into cardiac arrest last week. I trust my new pacemaker will allow me to be here for many years to come. For all the joys and sorrows we've shared aloud, for all that we carry in our hearts, we give thanks for this community.
This is a piece written by a UU minister, Marcus Liefert. It's called The Grout. The Unitarian Universalist congregation where I served as an intern made a mosaic tree of life the summer before I arrived. Congregants of all ages came together to craft the tree's leaves using bits and pieces of broken ceramics, jewelry, glass, and stone. There are many precious personal items in the tree, including fragments of the Berlin Wall, a father's watch face, pieces of great-grandmother's china, and a key to the front door of a loved home. Like the members of the community that brought them together, each part is imbued with memories and meaning. Each fragment holds a piece of truth. Unitarian Universalists are mosaic makers. We are a people who bring together the broken pieces of our histories and the shining pieces of our seeking, and piece by piece create a mosaic religion. Our tree of life is found in the stories of our living tradition, the bead from a transformational moment of worship at a youth conference, the bit of paper stamped with the blazing emblem of the Unitarian Service Committee that saved lives during World War II, the button or patch on a backpack that proudly proclaims the first justice issue that lit our souls on fire. But our mosaic making tells another story too, one that is often more difficult to see, one that is essential to the purpose of religious community, one that lies not in the beautiful and broken bits and pieces, but in the grout, the chalky, gritty stuff that is squeezed between the cracks of tiles. In a mosaic, the grout holds the image together, unifying disparate pieces into a whole. The grout of a community takes years to lay and settle. Grout happens in board meetings and committee meetings and endless emails and slow-moving institutions, long ramp constructions. It is in weekly potlucks shared by neighbors, a ride to church, a coffee in the social hall after worship, while the folks who show up for church only on Christmas and Easter will hopefully enjoy the beauty of the mosaic they find. They may never know the power of the grout that holds us through all the seasons of life.
Thank you so much to Reverend Sally and to Reverend Beth for being alongside of me during this service, and for our musicians, and for Michael, and for Alyssa, and all the people that helped put this together. Really appreciate that. So grout is a mixture of water, cement, and sand. The grout that holds Unitarian Universalism together is also made up of three ingredients, three disciplines defined eloquently by Connie Goodbread: covenant, pluralism, and transformation. And those simple ingredients, they're basic, but they're not easy. The first discipline is that we are a covenantal but not a creedal faith. Instead of a statement of belief or creed that binds us together, we have covenant, which is a sacred promise we make to ourselves and to one another. Covenant helps us define what our relationship is so that we can understand how we will be together, what we can expect from one another, and what we hold ourselves accountable to. That covenant is based on the core values of interdependence, pluralism, justice, transformation, generosity, and equity. And these 6 values are held together by love, a practice that goes beyond emotion or feeling, a verb that asks the question, how are we to live? Love in UUism is a form of agape love, which is known for its qualities of empathy and sacrifice, and its desire for the best for all. UUism teaches that love is inseparable from justice and that it can inspire people to act with courage, compassion, and forgiveness. It can also remind people of their interdependence with all of life and lead to practices of welcome, growth, and adaptation. UUs believe that love can help people seek wholeness and liberation, and can lead to a desire for others to experience freedom and safety and joy. The second ingredient, the discipline of pluralism. Pluralism is truly accepting and acknowledging the truths of other people, the reality that many things can be true and are true at the same time, that each of us brings a unique experience and perspective to our community, and we are made richer by being bound to one another and sharing deeply our experiences and understanding of that reality. Our sources of wisdom represent the pluralism that we honor and apply to our faith development. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture and experience and theology. We covenant, we promise to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And we embrace our differences and commonalities with love and curiosity and respect. If we practice covenant and pluralism, we will, as individuals, be transformed. And so transformation is the third discipline, the third essential ingredient of our grout. Unitarian Universalism is a living tradition, And the goal of this living tradition, and really of all living things, is change. The transformation of the individual, who will then transform the world. Connie Goodbread says, UUs aren't born again, but are born again and again and again. Unitarian Universalism is a living tradition, and the goal of this living tradition is change. The transformation of the individual, who will go on to transform the world. And I'd like to bring up the crooners one more time to perform the song We Are. So this is not a participation song. You can watch them as they sing beautifully. All right, we are in the home stretch, I promise. We're in the final part. The congregation is the curriculum. And if Unitarian Universalism is the grout made up of the three ingredients that hold us together, then when we interact with one another in community, we are engaged in an ongoing process of nurturing people's spirits and character and growth. I offer another metaphor. If everything we teach is UU, then where and how we teach it is here, together. Here, not just in this building, although that's a big part of it, but here in our relationships and interactions with one another. In fact, I would go as far to say that this congregation is a learning lab. And if you allow me to geek out for just a moment, a learning lab is defined as a physical, digital, and human space for observation, experimentation, and evaluation, to rethink and enrich learning and teaching attitudes and practices. A learning lab is an incubator of innovation and learning structured on the dimensions of space, activity, and community. In essence, a learning lab is a safe place to experiment, to observe, to try, to practice, to mess up, and start again. Curriculum then in religious education is more than just lesson plans and learning objectives. If we look at it more holistically, we can see that everything a congregation does is religious education and faith development for all ages, all the time. It's like the Sophia Faz quote, "Life becomes religion whenever we make it so." Curriculum is not something that only or even primarily happens in the classroom. It doesn't just happen downstairs. It happens throughout our whole congregation. It happens in every impression that we give, every interaction that we have, in every choice we make about this community. The congregation is the curriculum because everything about our congregation communicates what we value and what we believe. Some of that curriculum as a congregation is explicit. The 8 principles, our covenant, the mission and vision statements, the statements of welcome that we hang in our doors, the flags outside, information on our website, our written materials. Explicit messages about our beliefs and our values are important, but just as the spirit of the law is more powerful than the letter, the implicit curriculum, or the ways that we live out our beliefs and values, are far more powerful and testify far, far more powerfully. This congregation's implicit curriculum is made up of our norms and our regular practices. It's how our children and youth and new people who walk in the door are welcomed and involved. It's how our leaders are chosen and trained and developed and nurtured. It's how we make our budgets. It's how much we do or we don't tolerate when people break our covenant. It's whether we get mad or we laugh when things go wrong or when the service runs a little bit long. And then there's the congregation's null curriculum. The null curriculum is what isn't there. It's the absence of certain words or symbols, like the lack of creed or a dogma. But it also includes things like the lack of wheelchair access to parts of the building, or only having 1 or 2 high schoolers participate in our activities, or when we avoid conflict and turn the other way. The absence of things often communicates more about a community than the things that are present, whether in positive or negative ways. So the congregation is the curriculum. Unitarian Universalism is all that we teach. Faith development is all that we do. And just as it takes a village to raise our children, it takes a village to support people of all ages and help them learn and to grow. Spiritual growth and the never-ending search for truth and meaning are so important to our faith that they make up our 3rd and our 4th principles. And if growth and the search for truth are that important, then religious education is just as important for adults as it is for our kids. And if the congregation is the curriculum and everything that we do teaches our faith, then worship and engagement and involvement in the life of the congregation is just as important for our kids and youth as it is for adults. I want to leave you with some powerful words by Unitarian theologian William Ellery Channing. They are about the purpose of religious education, and I've amended them just a little bit so that they aren't geared just towards children, but towards each of us. He writes, "The great end in religious instruction is not to stamp our minds upon others, but to stir up their own, not to make them see with our eyes, but to look inquiringly and steadily with their own, not to give them a definite amount of knowledge, but to inspire a fervent love of truth, not to form an outward regularity, but to touch inward springs, not to bind them by erratic prejudices to our particular sect or particular notions, but to prepare them for impartial, conscientious judging of whatever subjects may be offered to their decision. Not to burden the memory, but to quicken and strengthen the power of thought, not to impose religion upon them in the form of arbitrary rules, but to awaken the conscience, the moral discernment. In a word, the great end is to awaken the soul, to excite and cherish spiritual life. So I invite you all as one to rise in body, or if your body is not able, then in spirit, and join one more time to sing together From You I Receive. We can just sing it together, not in a round. I receive, to you I give, together we share, from this we live. So we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. May we carry these in our hearts and minds until we're together again.